Well, don't get me wrong. Like the fully AI model is still amazing. I think that it really doesn't matter how you do it. It's I think at the end of the day, what matters most is your ability to just tell a good story. You can shoot on an iPhone. You can shoot like with a potato. Like it really doesn't matter. Like all that matters is that you're able to tell a good story. Whatever workflow works best for you is the one that you should be using. I will say if I were to give anyone advice, if they were to do sort of standard filmmaking, I think that it's for me personally, I think it's still if you are trying to be a filmmaker, and you're starting out with AI, purely AI, I would suggest that you start learning the traditional methods as well because those are tried and true, right? I think it's still important for you to be able to step out and work with actors and work with other people on a real set. But I think that AI is a good gateway to that, right? And I think that like you can prove yourself as an amazing storyteller with just AI, and then you can like use that as a platform to get you further down the line.
And welcome back to another episode of the 100-Year Podcast. My name is Adario Strange, and this week we have with us a special guest, Nem Perez, a traditional director and one of the, I would say, preeminent new crop of AI directors. And he's actually involved in a couple of projects we've discussed here before, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Nem, how are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thanks for having me. I'm currently in my hotel room in Arkansas, Bentonville, Arkansas, for a film festival. Actually, talking about AI is here as well. So, once again, thanks for having me.
What's the film festival? What is
It's called the Bentonville Film Festival, and I think like a lot of other film festivals, they're trying to spread the word about AI. And so I'm here. I'm going to be talking on a panel with other specialists from IBM and IndieWire and Fabric, to just talk about all things AI.
Are you aware of the festival from Tribeca coming, like the AI focused? Are you involved in that? Do you find that interesting that such a high profile film festival is like going so deep into the AI space?
Not surprised. And actually, two of the T2 artists that were involved in my T2 project are presenting films at the Tribeca Film Festival, including Reza, who is using Sora for his short film. So he's premiering a short film there.
Have you had a chance to touch Sora?
I have not. No, I'm not one of the lucky few that people that have. But I did try that new Dream Machine that just came out. It's pretty comparable to Sora, so that's pretty cool.
I want to get into that. Let's get into that a little bit later. First, let's kind of set the stage. Let's talk about who you are. The reason I find you perhaps more interesting than kind of like many AI creators, film creators, is that you are actually a traditional director. You've done work for Walt Disney Resorts, Adidas, Converse, I think Puma, car companies. I mean, you've done a lot of agency work, commercial work, and not just directing, editing, VFX. So you really know your stuff. I mean, like, just give us a background. Like, where are you from? I think you're from Chicago, but I mean, like, what? You're in LA now. You're a Hollywood guy now. I'm hoping you didn't go Hollywood. You joined us, so you didn't go to Hollywood. You're good enough to join us. But what's the path? Like, how'd you go from Chicago to Hollywood? What have you been doing before this AI boom?
Yeah, so I'll try to be as concise as possible. But yeah, born and raised in Chicago. I actually started doing music videos. So, I grew up in like this really amazing community of musicians and artists that were doing some pretty incredible things during the like blog era of hip hop. So I started doing a lot of hip hop videos in my early days. So I did a lot of videos for Chicago artists such as like Chance the Rapper and like Vic Mensa and Rocky Fresh. And so that's how I got my start in filmmaking. And then Hit Boy, who, if you're familiar, he's like Grammy Award winning producer of In Paris and like a bunch of Drake and Beyonce tracks. He called me after watching one of my videos, said, come out to LA. That's how I got my start in LA. Started doing a bunch of commercials. I also have a background in advertising. So I've been in advertising for over 2 decades doing creative technology work involving art and technology to create experiences for brands. And started doing a lot of commercial work after my music videos. And then I was really fortunate enough that through my connections in advertising, I got Disney got in touch with me because they were looking for a director who can pretty much do it all. So I acquired Disney as my first client for my production company. And since then, I've directed over 12 commercials for Disney. Now, fast forward about a year and a half ago, I got really heavily involved with AI. And two things happened. I started actually my own AI company called Storyblocker. And Storyblocker is a film tool. It's an iOS app that helps filmmakers visualize their movies. And it's also a production company. So we produced the T2 Remake. And that's kind of where we're at today.
Let's get granular for a second, though. Like, what was the first AI tool you touched? And before you touched yourself, like, what was your first experience? What's the first thing you saw? Whether it was a still image, like what was your? Give me your first aha moment.
Yeah, I remember pretty vividly. Actually, I was at a party, and my friend showed me something that he made on Midjourney. At that point, I kind of heard about Midjourney, but I thought it was like under lock and key, and like only a few people had access to it. But he was showing me how actually he was making assets for his Dungeons and Dragons events. He was making like characters for Dungeons and Dragons. And so immediately I got access to Midjourney and I started just creating just everything and anything, right? And then the real light bulb moment for me was like, wow, like I think I could actually create like concept art for films and movies that I have in my head. So I started doing that really, really heavily. I created basically a beat per beat shot list of a movie that I had called The Time Traveler's Dilemma, and then I put that out there, and that kind of got the ball rolling.
Actually, that's a perfect time for us to cut in. Let's take a look at the Time Traveler's Dilemma.
This place, it bears no trace of life, no symphony of existence. The sands beneath my feet remember nothing but silence, carrying the secrets of epochs long forgotten. It is as if time has lost its grip here, leaving me adrift in a cosmic sea of obscurity. But I will not surrender to the desolation. I will endure, for my quest through the ages has taught me resilience. The time stream may have betrayed me, but I will not forsake the chance to unravel the riddles of this desolate realm. She stood there, an otherworldly apparition. Was she a mere illusion, a mirage born of the harsh desert sun?
Where did you come from?
As the fire crackled and the elders spoke, they spoke of evil men, not of this world nor the next, that dwell in the shadows, waiting to entangle unsuspecting wanderers in their sinister web. Do I stay and protect her, or continue my mission? This is the Time Traveler's Dilemma.
So walk us through like what, first of all, how long did that take you to make?
So I started with just the images when I had access to Midjourney, and that took me like about a day, day and a half, and that was like in December of like 2022, I believe, and then or 2023, and then when Runway came out with their video model, I turned those images that I had made prior in Midjourney into this trailer. And then I put that out. And that's what actually got me into the Runway's creative partnership program, because they were looking for artists to showcase on their website, and they added this to that block of films.
Walk me through your process. So, I mean, some people use upscalers or they maybe use other kind of traditional tools to enhance what they are doing. Like, is that just pure Midjourney and Runway, or is there anything else you used in there?
Yeah, there's a full stack of things that I use. This trailer is actually like pretty old now. It's actually almost a year old. So the tools have evolved so much since then. I don't even think I used an upscaler for this, if I'm being honest. I'm not sure. But I know that the biggest thing that I used was Midjourney for the images, and then Runway for the video. And then I used, I believe, 11 Labs for the audio, and a bunch of other tools for sound effects and stuff. But now I'm actually considering remastering this trailer, to be honest with you, and like adding like the new tool sets and everything to see how far it's come. But now you've got like Leonardo, like Runway has way more tools for like lip syncing. Like if you saw like in that thing, the lip sync, like the face was still like you couldn't do moving images with lip syncing. So the tools were way less advanced back then.
Yeah, give me a sense of like, and without discussing the stuff we're going to talk about maybe later, like the tools just got released. Like, what's your tool set now? Like, if you have like, I don't know, a batch of whatever 50 images to create a short, what are the tools that you're employing?
Yeah, so the biggest ones are still Midjourney for image making, and then Runway for video making. But then there's like a bunch of other stuff, like Magnific is great for upscaling the Midjourney images. And then now Korea is actually adding a video upscaler that lets you upscale videos creatively. So that could be like after you finish with Runway, you send it to Korea. And then after all that, you'll probably finish it off with Topaz. And then there's like a bunch of other stuff in between if you want to do anything like very specific, like if you're trying to do motion capture, like Viggle's great. If you're trying to do like videos to video style transfer, Kyber and LensGo are great, so it really depends on what you're trying to do. But I use all the tools, really. There's no limitations. And of course, Storyblocker, which is my company, is great for previs. So Storyblocker is great for if you're actually going to shoot the thing. So, it's great for people that want to figure out their blocking and where their physical camera is going to be in the shoot, where the lights and the actor is going to be, how the set is going to play out. Like you can do all of that with your phone, which in the past was impossible. You needed to have access to millions of dollars of equipment to do that.
I'm curious, like so many times, when I speak to AI filmmakers, they talk about like the top tier commercial products, which, I assume it's, generally because those are the most polished and, kind of, they're constantly being updated. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, why aren't they, even if your results aren't as fast or as slick, why aren't these guys using more open source tools? Primarily, I asked that question because I think, what if somewhere down the line you have a hit or you have something that kind of really gets traction or something you want to sell? Is there a possible complication with the company, that you use to, generate these images or generate the film? Whereas with open source, it's pretty much, free reign. You don't have to like worry about someone kind of back ending, coming on the back end, with like some sort of claim or question about profits or something like that. Do you get my concern? Do you understand where I'm going with that?
Yeah, I think that what you're saying is because I think are you talking about copyright issues? Is that what you're talking about?
I mean, everything from copyright to a company possibly, if something just goes super successful and maybe a company trying to reach in and say, hey, not necessarily copyright, but maybe, hey, you used our product to generate this. And here in our terms of service, buried in clause 56, we assert that, we have some sort of either profit or ownership or something. I'm being, very vague in general and I guess to some degree hyperbolic, but nevertheless, I think the spirit of what I'm saying is something worth considering. I mean, very rarely do I speak to an AI filmmaker who uses like almost exclusively open source tools or open source tools at all. And I'm just wondering, like, do you think that's an era? Do you see us maybe moving toward open? We're going to talk about this later, the Kling thing, which, but I mean, open source tools seem to be a place where you could basically create your project and never worry about any kind of claim. If it's a transgressive story, like something that's maybe controversial, you don't have to worry about, I'm not going to name a company, but some company coming back and saying, hey, we disavow, or, that's not, that was made with our product, but, we don't support it. Therefore, this artist, this director no longer is able to use our product. Something like that,
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't think it's a concern now. Actually, a lot of the AI companies want you to succeed so that they have a really good case study for why their tool is great and why it should be used. But I do see your concerns. Just so you know that there are issues with copyright, no matter if it's open sourced or not, right? Because it's all about the models. However, what a lot of people are figuring out now, and I'm actually doing a lot of this work with Tool, the production company that I'm repped with as a commercial director, is they're working on ways that they can do AI without the issues of copyright, right? And the ways that they're doing this is using models that are more they're more ethical because they own all the copyright from the material that it was trained off of, right? So Getty Images has a model that you can use, and Getty Images owns all of their images, right? Adobe Firefly is another model that they're claiming that they own all of the data that it was trained off of, right? So I think that as we get further and further down this road, we're going to start seeing solutions for this because it's something that is an issue right now and will have to get solved. On the question about using open source for these movies, these films, these projects versus third party, I think it's about the ease of use right now. Like me personally, I'm not too technical. I don't want to go in and have to install a Python script and do all of this and then run nodes in Comfy UI every time that I want to make something. Some people prefer that, but I like to just go in, create, and then just take the technical aspect out of it, right? And also every AI tool has its own recipe. So it's nice to work with their recipe, their flavor, like how they do things. So I will say this, like if you are taking this seriously, right? And if you are, and a lot of people are, like my production company, then you will have to use open source models that you can tell your client that, hey, look, this is our data set. You can take a look at it if you want. It's ethical, it's sourced properly, and we're going about this the right way. So I think that that is something that is going to have to be more widely adopted.
On this topic, and if you don't know about this story, that's fine. We can move on. But you mentioned Adobe, and there was a recent controversy where Adobe updated the terms of service for Photoshop. And we now know Adobe is also kind of like a big player in generative AI as well. And the artists and photographer community, they were outraged. It was like this big firestorm in social media. People saying, well, I'm going to switch to, tools like, I guess, Affinity and other open source tools instead of Photoshop. I think there's this kind of like fear, this creeping fear throughout the creative industry that some of these companies, whether it's Adobe or maybe even some of the new startups, may take overreaching control in some way over their work, whether it's using your artwork to train an AI model they haven't signed off on to be trained because it's in the terms of service, or maybe you're working on an NDA project, something where, okay, let's say I trust that this company is not going to train, its model on my work just because I'm using the tool, but this is an NDA project where, this is the next big Star Wars series of franchises and we can't afford any leaks, so I can't even have so things like that, people working on really big projects. I mean, do you think these concerns are valid? Do you think people are a little just like overblown in terms of their concerns?
No, they're completely valid. They're completely valid. I think actually Adobe, they rescinded that. So they said, my bad, we don't actually mean it.
Did that just happen? Because I saw the clarification, but they just pulled back completely
I
after
think
that?
so. I saw that they removed some language in there, but it was because of the backlash. And I think that we as artists, we need to speak up for our rights, right? Otherwise, changes won't be made. So I think it's totally valid. I totally agree with that. Also, there's an issue now with Instagrams or Meta's AI algorithm training off of all of the data that we use on our platform. So it is a problem. It is a problem, and I think that it's up to us to voice our opinions so that we can fix these issues, and so it's totally valid. And there are enterprise solutions. So actually, Runway has an enterprise license that you can use. I'm actually using it for a client right now that they say that they're not training off of any data. You own all of the copyright, you own all the materials, everything's protected. It's under even under encryption. And so I think that that is the path, right, where these companies start offering enterprise solutions so that we can start using these tools for real commercial work.
Okay, great point. The enterprise path. That, yeah, because that would basically make it financially viable for these companies to kind of have their cake and eat it too. Like for the general public, the normal version, and then for special projects, big companies, enterprise. I want to talk just go back a little bit to your commercial work. When you or your commercial director persona, when you're in Hollywood, and this is a question I ask often. Do you talk to other traditional directors and film industry people, commercial directors, like about AI, like people who aren't in the space? Like when we talk to one another, people in the AI space, creatives, that's one thing. That's like a very interesting, colorful conversation. But when you talk, you yourself, when you're in LA, you talk to normal people about AI, in the space, in the industry, what is the reaction? Like, what's the sentiment?
It's mixed. It's mixed. So, there's a lot of fear, valid fear. There's a lot of concerns. And I think that it's our job as, the people that are creating these pieces of work and, influencing, that we move about in a way that is fair and ethical, and in a way that, again, like if we have concerns, we speak up about it, right? So personally, I'm pretty optimistic about AI and how it could be used in filmmaking. I actually think that it's a tool that can empower filmmakers. I mean, personally, I've been extremely empowered by the work that I've been doing in AI, and especially with the T2 project. And a lot of my peers that are working in AI right now are now getting opportunities that they could only have dreamed about, before. So I think that if you embrace it, it could be an extremely powerful tool. Um, right now, I think that the best use case for AI is actually in pre-visualization, essentially being able to dream up your movie before you go out and shoot it. So if you're a filmmaker that does traditional filmmaking, you know, sometimes you'll step foot on set and you get asked a million questions, right? What is the color of this? What is this person wearing? How does this look like? What does the world that we're building feel like? And I think that artificial intelligence allows you to create that world and all of your shots and the look of all your characters and your environment and the look and feel, so that you can look at it and decide, is this working sooner rather than later, because you don't want to find out it's not working once you're on set, right? So I think that AI is extremely powerful for concepting and pre-visualizing and storyboarding. And actually, I think that's a godsend because a lot of these films are going to be better for that. Like they're just going to be better because you've already figured everything out before you step foot on set.
Star Wars acolyte. Sorry. No, just reference to that really unfortunate situation. Speaking of godsend, I think what you said is dead on, because it's like I think what a lot of filmmakers call their world building reference is a Bible.
Mhm.
like a Bible of like, whether it's a television series or a movie, a film. They create a Bible in AI, whether it's the script or the visuals or the location. Is it a period look? How are the characters styled? Is it kind of like goth 80s? Is it grungy DTLA? What's the look? Yeah, I agree. It makes it much easier to create kind of like a Bible, like a film Bible. You mentioned T2, and I think this is a perfect opportunity to like take a look at that trailer.
Get to the chopper, baby. And they say AI can't do hands.
My boobies can dance better than you, asshole.
It can mimic any object it touches within reason.
Basically, it's a glorified shape-shifting spork.
More along the lines of inflammable dildos and rubber duckies.
So that was our T2 remake, and we actually had one of the collaborators, Ben Nash, on months ago. And just to kind of explain for those who are unaware of what it is, and if I get any of this wrong, Nem, correct me. Basically, it's about 50 artists, 45 or 50, I can't remember the exact number, who came together, all AI short filmmakers, and basically they collaged together a full film that's basically a parody of Terminator 2 with Arnold Schwarzenegger and the other stars. And this is, I think what's unique about this is not only is it like comedy, taking sci-fi and comedy, which is really cool, but you guys actually showed it in March in a real theater in Los Angeles. I think the landmark Newmark Theater in Los Angeles. Was it a packed house? What did it feel like? Were there any weird hiccups? Like, tell me about the experience of actually showing this in person.
Yeah, that was honestly such a pivotal moment for me in AI. And it was a sold out show, pretty incredible. We had a bunch of people out there, the folks from Curious Refuge. We had some people from IndieWire and Variety Magazine, and basically, yeah, some people from Hollywood were there. So it was a really important moment because you know we want to show Hollywood that AI is here to stay, and that you can actually make movies with AI. And I'm hoping that we prove that. So I think that also one of the most incredible things about my journey and about AI is the community of artists within this space, right? I think that for me, the goal with the T2 remake was there was a few things. One of them was to remove all the negativity around AI, and that's why we chose T2, right? Because we wanted to flip the script. Essentially, when you hear about these conversations or these articles about AI, they always reference Terminator, right? Because that is literally the worst possible outcome that could happen is that Skynet will take over, the machines destroy the world. And personally, I don't think that that is going to happen, right? And what I wanted to do was I wanted to shed light on all the good that AI has done within the community. I wanted to showcase all of the artists that are making incredible things with these tools. So I wanted all of us to come together and make something that was bigger than all of us. And that's how our T2 remake was born. So it was absolutely incredible that we had a chance to premiere it in Hollywood properly. It was such a great outcome. We even had some short films play and some short trailers play before the movie. And so much has happened since then. A lot of artists, including myself, are now getting signed to commercial production companies. A lot of artists have won awards. Junie won at the AI Film Festival Silver, and Reza is now premiering this Saturday at the Tribeca Film Festival. A lot of other people have gone on to do such amazing things, and I think that was a goal for the T2 remake. And of course, like a lot of credit, so much credit is just to their amazing work, but like it was all about just embracing this community and showing the world, look at what these incredible artists can do.
Yeah, I have so many questions about this project. But first of all, like I know Sway. I mentioned Ben Nash. I know Sway Molina is kind of one of the primary. Like who came up with the original idea? Like who kicked this off? And just like give me the process, like how the kickoff and then where it went from there.
Yeah, so it was me and Sway who produced the film together, right? Shout out to Sway. And basically, I had the idea. Um, it was actually inspired by a film that came out 10 years ago called Our RoboCop Remake. And essentially, it was a remake of RoboCop, very similar format, where all these filmmakers came together and they remade RoboCop in like this sort of like montage, exquisite corpse type of format, right? And because AI has all these different styles and all these different formats, and it's always ever changing, I thought that this format was the perfect format to make this movie. So I immediately, the first person I called was Sway, and Sway was so pivotal in making this movie happen because at that point, Sway was like really heavily involved in the community, even more than I was, especially on Twitter and X. And so he was the one that like sort of recruited all of these artists and created the Discord channel that we made. And the Discord was so important for making this movie as well, because basically it was a way for all of us to stay accountable. And it was a way for all of us to see basically all of the scenes that were being made, because we had made channels for every single scene. So I can go in and I can see Sway's scene and I can see all of his progress. I can give him kudos. I could be like, yo, this is dope. Like, this is really cool. I like what you're doing. So it was like a constantly morphing thing where we were all just collaborating like in real time, because we had artists from all over the world do this.
Was there like a master script, or did you guys just kind of like put it together on the fly? Like,
No, I think that it would have been a lot more tedious to, have a writer and then script everything out. I really wanted to give all the artists agency to literally just do whatever they wanted to do, right? That's why we brought them in, because they were already so capable. And so I wanted to, I didn't even know if it was going to work, because that seems like it could just go all over the place. So basically, we just gave them like loose instructions of like, look, you have the movie, you have the original movie, that is your blueprint. Now take every moment you can to just take things to like a level 10 in terms of comedy or like parody, right? So, like one of our artists did a teddy bear, the whole scene was just teddy bears, which was a hit. Sway did Mr. T800, and I think that like a lot of artists took, like I did a Mortal Kombat sequence. So at the end of the movie, there's like this big like hand-to-hand fight combat between the two Terminators. And so I just reimagined that as a Mortal Kombat fight sequence. So really, yeah, that was it. That was a process.
yeah, I'm curious. Like, I'm noticing like in AI filmmaking, there is this almost organic habit of collaboration. I mean, this is a mega collaboration, but I've seen other collaborations before, and it's interesting because it's almost counterintuitive. You would think that if like in filmmaking in general, it's all about basically bringing a group of people together to basically have a party, a structured party to create something cool. But with AI tools, one would think that, well, now I can be an introvert and just like stay in my basement and work and create this masterpiece by myself. But what we're seeing is almost the opposite. We're seeing this almost organic push toward collaboration. What do you think that's about? I find it quite interesting.
Again, it just all goes back to the community, right? I think that like right now what we're seeing in AI is this artist movement, of just like all these emerging artists, these emerging filmmakers, just for the first time having an opportunity to create something. Like me personally, I've been a film director for, close to 2 decades now. And, I've done music videos, I've done commercials, like I said, for Disney. And I've always been trying to figure out how I can make a feature film or a film in general, and it always came back to the money that I didn't have access to. And that's what stopped me every time was like, look, if I need to make a movie, I need to find, $10,000, $100,000 that I don't have access to. So it's kind of like weird, right? Because like I could be the greatest storyteller in the world, but I can't tell a story if I don't have money. Like that shouldn't be. So now for the first time, I think that because we're seeing these collaborations, because we are all so inspired, and we're all like, we all have this like chip on our shoulders too, to like prove to Hollywood that you can make things with AI, So I think that it's just sort of this like beautiful circle of like inspiration and creation that we're seeing within the community that's just like fueling itself.
Yeah, this makes me think about, and I brought this up in past episodes, kind of the emergence or the shift from film to digital editing, digital film recording and digital editing. And I remember, I guess early 90s, there was like a lot of pushback from traditional filmmakers against, shooting on digital. And then, there was kind of like a little, it reminds me a lot of what's happening now. There was like this, really cool collection of like people who were cutting edge, who were using all the tools. And then almost overnight, it seemed like the industry adopted digital, and, this whole idea of, well, if you're a big studio, you need all this money for the film and the processing of the film. And so as an indie, I can just use digital to like, cut my costs and kind of like maybe like, make more headway. That's gone now. Now that digital is the standard. And just because you make a digital film, it may never get seen. So I'm wondering, I kind of almost think the same thing might be on the way here. Like it seems like almost as soon as the studios adopt AI filmmaking, do you and your cohort, your compatriots, do you still get that same exposure? Like what happens? Like how do you maybe try? Is there any way to prevent that kind of thing happening? Pushing the indie scene into obscurity again, now that the tools are so accessible and relatively cheap.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, one thing that's interesting about AI is that, you don't really need too many resources, and I think that that's something that is important, right? Like for instance, the T2 project, a full-length feature film, had zero budget. And I can't even remember or even think of a feature film that was made with zero budget. So I think that's important because essentially, you don't really need studio backing to make an AI film, right? Like you can just make it yourself. I think that the issue that will have to get fixed is distribution. And I can tell you, I'm working on a few solutions myself. I can't say anything yet, but that will help on the distribution side of things. I think, YouTube's a great way to distribute stuff, but I think that there's a lot of things on YouTube, right? It's not just films, it's a whole plethora of things that are on there. But I think it would be nice to have a place where you can just go see AI films, or I like to call it like neo cinema, sort of this sort of realm of AI, Unreal Engine, animated, these sort of like indie sort of films that are like emerging now for the first time.
I feel like, and I bring this up often, Love, Death, and Robots on Netflix, I feel is almost like a preview of the kind of stuff that we'll be seeing with AI, and just kind of like this idea of, because a lot of the stories, it's a short anthology series. A lot of the stories, they mix techniques. They'll mix live action with, motion capture and 3D rendering. So speaking of that hybrid approach, and that's an interesting term. I hadn't heard, the neo cinema, neo film. Do you think kind of like this approach of shooting, live action and mixing that with AI footage. Do you think that's the first runway toward, AI filmmaking going big, or is it or mostly self-contained AI films where it's everything is generated?
You nailed it. Absolutely. So personally, the way that I like to approach is with the hybrid model. So I like to use real actors because I think you just get way more emotion out of it. You just get way more just action and just like movement that you just can't get out of a purely AI workflow. Um, and so, actually, a lot of the things that I'm working on now are sort of these hybrid workflow solutions. And I think that, for mainstream, I think that that is going to be the solution that will win out, you know? Um, so right now, like I'm developing a bunch of short film ideas or concepts that use this hybrid model, and as well as the Unreal Engine stuff. So I think that what Corridor Digital did with their rock paper scissors short film is like the gold standard for like how to create with AI films, right? So basically, what they did is they shot everything live action on a really small green screen, and then the actors were all synthesized with Stable Diffusion, and then the backgrounds were all created in Unreal Engine. And you just get way better quality and control out of it, because at the end of the day, something that's lacking across the board, whether you have Sora or Kling or whatever, is control. Like, and I think that if you are a real filmmaker, like, you need to control your narrative and you need to control your story. And also, if you're going to be working with clients are going to expect control, right? So I think that the best way to have control is to use these hybrid models of working with real actors.
So it's interesting. You brought up the, control, traditional filmmaking meets AI. That brings me to like a very important question. So throughout AI, whether we're talking about AI generated text, still images, photos, films, music, the differentiator, at least from my side, seems to be, are you steeped in the craft that you're using AI to enhance or to optimize your workflow for? So do you have traditional filmmaking skills? Are you a musician, outside of AI? Now we all know you can get great results from AI without having any traditional training in these various areas. But particularly with regard to the hybrid approach, it seems to me like if someone isn't, a traditional filmmaker or has no, traditional filmmaking training, that approach is either extremely difficult for them or maybe not even accessible. So I'm just wondering, what do you think about this idea of just all of I would say the lion's share of the people that I've encountered using AI to create short films are not unique like yourself. I consider you unique, someone who's a traditional filmmaker who has adopted the cutting edge technology. You're unique now. I'm sure you won't be unique in a year from now, but you're still unique. Most of the people are not. They don't have that training. So what happens to them as we kind of move forward? Are they just taking the blows, kind of paving the way for traditional filmmakers until they wake up and start adopting the tools? Like if I'm someone who has no filmmaking training, traditional filmmaking training, and I want to, let's say, do a short film with the hybrid approach, what would your advice be to me? And let's say I have no traditional filmmaking training.
Well, don't get me wrong. Like the fully AI model is still amazing. I think that it really doesn't matter how you do it. I think at the end of the day, what matters most is your ability to just tell a good story, right? And I think that no matter how, like, you can shoot on an iPhone, you can shoot like with a potato, like it really doesn't matter. Like all that matters is that you're able to tell a good story. Like at the end of the day, like, one of my favorite YouTubers is like Casey Neistat, and he infamously uses the worst cameras to tell his stories, but he's a good storyteller. Like I'm engaged every time like he makes something because he's able to draw you into the story, right? So don't get me wrong, like I think that whatever workflow works best for you is the one that you should be using. I will say if I were to give anyone advice, if they were to do sort of standard filmmaking, I think that it's for me personally, I think it's still, if you are trying to be a filmmaker, and you're starting out with AI, purely I would suggest that you start learning the traditional methods as well, because those are tried and true, right? I think it's still important for you to be able to step out and work with actors and work with other people on a real set. But I think that AI is a good gateway to that, right? And I think that like you can prove yourself as an amazing storyteller with just AI, and then you can like use that as a platform to get you further down the line. You can shoot with your phone now. Your phone is such an incredible tool for making movies. Actually, we just shot a short film that we did for a 48-hour film festival, 48-hour film challenge, and we won first place. And we use traditional actors. We use actors and a traditional camera. And I shot it on a small little mirrorless camera with no lights, just a simple microphone, and then I just basically ran a diffusion on top of everything, to give it more of a distinctive look and gave it more production quality. So that's a really good example of like very limited resources. I think like, we had a budget of $500, but I think we only spent like 300 to make it. And it was only 3 people. So it was 3 people, $300 to make this short film, and I think that maybe the reason why it won is, the story. Like, it was a zombie romantic comedy, a gay zombie romantic comedy, so we called it a zomcom, and, it was very unique how we had set it up, and, yeah, I think the audience really liked it, so I think at the end of the day, it's all about story. It's not available online, unfortunately. So yeah, it's not available yet. They're actually making a documentary about the making. So it's basically the way that it was part of this Cinema Synthetica 48-hour film challenge. Variety did an article about it if you want to look that up. And they got 3 teams of 3 artists, and some of the T2 people were part of the other teams. I was paired up with Jagger Waters and Adriana, 2 other amazing AI filmmakers, and we had 48 hours. We all had the same script, the same exact script, but with nothing, no descriptions of the characters or location or whatever. So we all teams got the same script from Emmy Award winning scriptwriter Bernie Sue, and then from there, really, the only limitations were that it had to use AI.
That makes me think of an idea. Well, first, what's the name of this short that you
Yeah,
won
so it's called
the
Love at
award
First
for?
Bite. Love at First Bite. If you look that up.
Love it.
Mhm.
Okay. Um, I have an idea I'm going to put out into the universe. It's free for the producers of this series to take. VHS AI. The VHS horror series? Are you
Oh
aware of that?
yeah.
Yes. I mean, it's one of my favorite horror series, and it's like basically an anthology of
Anthology.
like short horror. And they always do like a different twist, with each new entry. I could totally see VHS AI.
100%.
So I put it out into the universe. I hereby claim brilliant idea formation, whatever.
Yeah.
So let's create an imaginary person who I'm sure actually exists. He is a young man who came to Los Angeles. He's now, let's call him 33. He's seen some wars, in the industry. He's interned half his life away, but now he's got cinematography skills. He's directed, a couple of shorts. He did like a low level commercial here and there and got paid well. And now he's actually starting to move into, working on some feature film stuff. He's got all the chops. He went to film school, really smart, very techie, but he refuses to engage AI. He is firm in his stance. You meet this guy at a party, somewhere up in the Hollywood Hills or Malibu or wherever, and over drinks, he asserts to you that, I refuse to use these tools. And again, he's young, he's tech savvy, and he's fully engaged. What do you say to that guy?
Good for you. I don't know. Honestly, like it's not. Here's the thing about AI that I think that you know people kind of misunderstand. And I kind of blame this on the media because the media is always like polarizing and it's like this or that. And AI is not this or that. It's this and that, right? So like I think that what AI is doing is that it's opening up new doors, new genres of films, new ways of making films, but those aren't going to be the only ways of making film, right? If you look at cinema today, there are many ways that you can go about making your film, right? So animation is one of them, right? So does that mean that because CGI animation is a way to make movies, that that's the only way to make movies, and now there's no other way, and that's it? Hollywood is over? No, right? Like, so I think that you should look at it from a different point of view, right? Like, again, going back to like what you were saying is like the winning workflow. If you can't do traditional filmmaking, that's okay. I think that whatever works for you is best, right? I think that I shouldn't force anything on anyone. If that young filmmaker is great with the camera, then amazing. He might be the next Christopher Nolan, who traditionally he shoots on film. He doesn't like to use a lot of VFX, or he could be the next James Cameron who likes to use VFX and is really heavily into that world. And I don't think that there's any right way to tell a story. I think that at the end of the day, you just have to tell a good story, right? And I think that matters more than anything.
I love that you're not asserting an orthodoxy, like oh, if you don't use these tools, you're obsolete. I like that. I like that. That's a great attitude. So speaking of new tools, and we're going to kind of wrap up. In the last 2 weeks, we have been given 2 new gifts for the AI filmmaking world. One is called Kling, which is, I believe, coming from China. And then the other is Luma, which seems to really be taking off because I think it's a little bit more accessible. Give me your kind of mini review of both. Like, what were your impressions, thoughts?
Yeah, so far it looks amazing. It's funny because right when Luma dropped, I was actually getting on a plane to come here to Arkansas, and I knew that the servers were going to be backed up immediately. So I just got in a few prompts, right before takeoff. Like I was like, oh, let me just try this out really quick, and I knew that by the time I had landed, it was probably going to be too late, and I was right because by the time I landed, I think the servers were backed up for hours or days. So from the little that I've tried it, it looks absolutely incredible. Like I said, I actually want to remaster some of my old work with it. And, again, it's incredible, but it's it's a step further, but we still have the same issues that every AI tool has, which is control, right? Like you really can only work with what the AI gives you. You can't really direct it, right? So like for instance, like if I have a shot where I need the person to take off their glasses and turn their head to the right, there is literally no tool right now that will let you do that. The only way that you can do that is working with real actors. So you can work with the real actor, make them do the action, and then you can make the world and the environment look however you want, right? So I personally think that is still a really good workflow. And if you don't have actors, so for instance, that's why I made Storyblocker, my app, a plug for that, because basically
Give us the URL for Storyblocker.
Okay, so Storyblocker is a mobile application where you can essentially project your film in augmented reality, so in the real environment, and then you can use your phone to play around and shoot that environment. You could also use a virtual camera, similar to like an Unreal Engine, but it's a way more simplified version of a 3D environment. So it's like almost like a video game, if you will, where you can now control your environment, move around your environment, and shoot your film in that virtual world. And then what's great about it that you can bring that virtual world into the real world, and then now you can bring in actors and all this stuff. And then the last step is the AI. So then you can now AI everything and then make it look however you want. So if I'm shooting, let's say, a knight in front of a castle, right? I can use a 3D model of a knight. I can use a 3D model of a castle, and then I can project that in my backyard and then shoot, the angles that I want, and then have the knight pose however I want him to pose. Or I could just do it in a virtual camera in a 3D environment, and I think that that's a really good way to control basically your shots.
Business first. Do you have investors for
I'm
this?
I'm looking for investors. Yeah, definitely. I would love if you have, yeah, some connections.
We'll test one
We're
out.
raising
Okay.
right now, so yeah, absolutely.
Is it iPhone only? iPhone, Android?
So it's iOS based right now to begin with, because that was an easy path forward, and also we were really looking at Apple Vision Pro support, because in my head, I think that if we want to immerse people into their stories, Apple Vision Pro is a really good way to do that. And so, I like to compare it to when I was a kid, and I would play with my action figures, and I would be able to place all my characters, my X-Men figures, and all this stuff, and then create my world. I think that, like, as filmmakers, it would really be great if we could all play in the sandbox of the films that we're making, so that we can go out and shoot it more prepared. So the tool is actually meant for people who are actually going to shoot their stuff, because it allows you to plan out your whole entire environment and all your shots.
And is there a website
Yeah.
for more?
So you can check it out at storyblocker.com, and you can download it on the App Store today. It's an open beta. Actually, I might take it off the App Store because it's still a work in progress. We're still building it. So it is still in beta form, but Apple doesn't let you like publicly release beta stuff. So I put it out there, but actually I might take it back because we want to keep working on that.
Do you have a Vision Pro, and have you watched 3D films on it? What do you think? Thoughts?
Yeah, I had a Vision Pro for 2 weeks, and then I returned it because I didn't get enough use out of it. Yeah,
Okay.
here's the thing, like, I think it's an incredible device. I really do think that it's the best out of all of them. For me, the biggest gripe was just the price point. Honestly, the price point, it was just too expensive, like, for me, it costs close to $5,000. People say 3,500, but they forget the taxes, they forget the case that you put it in, they forget people who have glasses have to pay another 150, they forget the Apple Care, and after all that, it's close to $5,000. So, if I could get it used, for a cheaper price, I'd probably do that. But for me, especially as someone who's working on a startup, I used it for research development, R&D, and we were able to put the Storyblocker on the App Store, but it was just too high of a price point for me currently. Other people maybe not, but I honestly do think it's a great device for entertainment. It's a really good device for entertainment.
I think I saw one on eBay maybe for 2,000. I could be wrong, but I feel like I saw that. I almost like hit disconnect when you said you returned your Apple Vision Pro, but never mind that. I'm just a big fan. Have you seen a 3D film on the Vision Pro?
It's an incredible experience. I saw a whole Marvel movie on the Apple Vision Pro, and I was actually like blown away. Like I said, it's a great device. It really is. I just wish it was maybe $2,000.
Yeah, I think the Pro is the indicator that it's for just the people with whatever money to burn.
Yeah.
The regular / light will most likely be significantly cheaper,
Guaranteed.
and
Yeah.
probably just as magical.
Yeah. I guarantee that's right around the corner. Like, yeah, for sure.
Do you think? Have you checked with Guinness? Are you guys like the first to show a full length feature film, completely AI generated in a theater with a live audience?
I don't think that we were the first to do that. I actually have to check. I think there was another film. I think it was called like Window Plane something. It was like a black and white film, and I know that they were quote unquote like the first feature length film. However, I do think that the way that we went about it was a way that I think that others can maybe pursue it in the future, where it's this big Hollywood premiere. We have this great trailer. We had posters. We had a red carpet event. We did a bunch of press and PR. We even had T-shirts at the event that like we weren't selling them, but like we were wearing ourselves. A lot of like memorabilia. So I think that the biggest question is like, can I make money with my films, right? And I think that once the copyright stuff gets resolved, I think that people can look at this as a really good way to go about it, right? Again, our film was non-commercial. I just want to be clear, we didn't make any money, we didn't profit off of that, but we did these things to showcase, how it could be done, right? But I'll have to check on that. I'm not sure if we were like the first.
You should check it. Maybe the other guy slipped up, and maybe it's like not, it's not long enough, and you guys are long enough. Who knows? You just maybe check. You want to put yourself in the history books. You're already in the history books, but any extra thing helps. You mentioned profit, and it's a parody, so that kind of like generally gets a pass. But did anybody from the studio contact you guys? Any players disturbed or anything?
No, no, and honestly, that was like our biggest fear the whole time while we were making this movie. We consulted with like 5 lawyers, including like a lawyer from like Midjourney, or I think like they rep Midjourney or something. But like, we really try to do our due diligence to make sure that we weren't like, pissing off the wrong people. Excuse my French, but yeah, I mean, like, that's why it's a parody to begin with. That's why it's a non-commercial film to begin with, and that's why we actually have a disclaimer at the beginning of the movie saying that like this is purely for research purposes. But honestly, like, I was kind of surprised at the reception. Honestly, like, a lot of people really loved it and really embraced it. I thought I was gonna get a lot of backlash. I didn't really get a lot of backlash. I thought that I was gonna get there was a reporter who was there. I won't name names, but he's notorious for, you know, writing a lot of negative press about AI. And he was there, and I kind of refused to talk to him. But he didn't really say anything. And I think it's because we did our due diligence, right? It's because we really tried to walk that line of like what's ethical and what's not. And parody has existed for ages. We didn't invent parody, right? So parody and fair use, is a thing for you to use copywritten material in any way you want. And so that was our way forward.
So we talked about how the film premiered in March, and you mentioned, you made a point of saying yeah, but things were so different back then, and what we were able to do. So that's kind of like an indication of how rapidly things change in the generative AI space. And now, we have the Kling and Luma and, Sora, which, limited access. This time next year, do you think, I'm asking for your call, your bet, do you think this time next year we have a major studio or even a indie, but, kind of like a mid-tier, like a studio that kind of gets films in theaters, maybe a Blumhouse or something like that? Do you think we see a traditional studio with a full-length feature film in theaters that is either 50% or full AI generated this time next year?
From a major studio?
Major or Blumhouse, like maybe a mid-size, like, I'm sure there'll be some tiny, but mid-size, like A24, Blumhouse, like, the middle tier, all the way up to the big guys.
I want to say yes. Yeah. And I think that it will be that hybrid model that we talked about. I think that it will be like a Waking Life, if you're familiar with that film, right?
I remember.
Yeah, I think
Linklater, right?
Yeah, Richard Linklater. I think that maybe maybe he's working on something. I have no idea, but I think it'll be.
That was.
Say what?
That was. I think he used rotoscoping technique throughout the film.
And that was rotoscoping, and I think that. Look, I can tell you that there's so many people in Hollywood right now figuring this out, right? I think like the whole Hollywood community is just buzzing about how they can use these tools. So I think eventually, that will happen. I think that what's stopping everyone right now is the legal issues, right? I think that the number one thing that's preventing everyone from actually doing this right now is the legal issues. And that's why I think that it will actually come from the indie community first, right? So I think that like it'll be like a T2 type project, right? Where like it's just a bunch of artists that made a film and then they just put it out there and that film's going to be absolutely incredible. So I think that will happen first. And then after that happens, maybe there's like a big insurance policy behind that movie or something, or I don't know how that works, but maybe like a studio will pick that up and then put that out there just as a test. Like I think like studios, I think they won't take that risk, but like if they see someone else taking that risk, they might like pick that up and put that out there. But I think that what needs to happen in order for that to happen first is that these models need to be more ethical. So I really like the work that Tool is doing, using like Getty Images, model, and I really like the work that Adobe is doing with the Firefly model, and I hope that more people start to pick up on that.
Okay, that's awesome. So I think that is a good place to wrap up. Tell us what's next. What do you have like kind of like in progress? Like what's going on for you personally?
A lot of things that I can't talk about. I will say I am working with a studio. That's all I will say. I'm working with a studio to try to figure out these things, right? And trying to figure out how we can navigate this. I'm also working within the community of like how we can make the next movie. Working on ways to distribute these films. Ways to finance these films. So yeah, I'm working on a lot right now. It's actually a really, really exciting time for me in my career. And I'm just so grateful for the T2 Remake and for the community of AI artists, because I think that without that, I'm not sure if I would be here now. So I'm super grateful for them.
Has the inflow of work requests or consulting, from whether it's agencies or studios or television organizations, like has that already flipped from traditional work requests to AI? Like, are you kind of like dilute AI stuff and you're kind of like fighting to do traditional stuff now?
I'm still doing traditional stuff, and that's not going to go away. But I'm repped at Tool. That's something I can say that I just got repped at Tool to do AI specific work, so AI and experiential work. So that right there is an indicator of how these production companies are navigating the space, right? So right now, we're working on doing campaigns for big brands that utilize AI to tell their stories and to do their commercials.
Awesome. Nem Perez, thank you for joining us. Your website is nemperez.com, correct? Mm-hmm. And any place else? Are you on X, Instagram?
Yeah, Nem Perez across the board. I would say check out T2 Remake at t2remake.com. Definitely go check out all the artists. Check out Storyblocker at storyblocker.com. See what we're doing there. And just stay tuned. I think like if you follow me on Instagram, you'll see more stuff as well.
And you can check out previous episodes of the 100 Year Podcast at 100year.com. And you can check out our newsletter, The 100 Year Lens, at 100year.substack.com. Thank you again, Nem, for joining us. This has been enlightening, fascinating, and you've actually got me excited. You're pretty chill, but everything you're saying is like extremely exciting. So thank you for joining us, and I'm looking forward to hearing more.
Thanks for having me.
See you guys next time.